This will be an example of mixed astigmatism. That's where you're nearsighted with your phone aligned along your spherical axis and you're farsighted with your phone aligned along your astigmatism axis using a T thermometer to determine both the type of refractive error you have and aligning your phone along your astigmatism axis, or in this case your spherical axis first, to determine your astigmatism axis in degrees. So at this point, we notice that there's a central white space separating the two blurs from each other along the central thermometer, which we don't really see on the left side where it's too narrow to have a central white space, and it's a little bit wider on the right side. First what we're going to do is we're going to rotate the phone slightly in one direction where we see the central white space thin or narrow, or certainly get duller. And that indicates we're going the wrong direction towards your astigmatism axis. And next we're going to be rotating the phone towards your spherical axis to where it becomes at its brightest or its widest. Since this is for the simulation, this is a +6 astigmatism, you're going to notice it mostly getting wider. Most of your refractive errors with mild astigmatism, you'll just notice the white space getting brighter as you rotate your phone, and then the blue upper or nasal line actually get dark blue right where you are at your astigmatism axis over a very narrow range, or rather your spherical axis in this case. So at this point we're rotating the phone, noticing it getting wider, and at some point as we rotate the phone it's starting to narrow now. So we're going to move back to where the central white space is at its widest, and you may also notice that the upper nasal line is at its darkest blue. If I move away from it, it gets lighter. If we move this direction, it gets lighter. But right here, not only is the central white space at its widest and brightest, but the nasal or upper line is also at its darkest blue. That indicates we're now aligned along the spherical axis. At this point, we can actually move closer to the phone to neutralize our nearsighted astigmatism as well. And as we get closer, the red line becomes in sharper focus and wider. And at some point, as we move closer, it becomes almost in perfect focus. Now moving closer, it actually thins a little bit or blurs a little bit. We'll move back to where it's wider and in perfect focus and test that neutral position by moving first closer to the phone and noticing it narrow, and then moving further away from the phone and noticing it narrow. So now we're at our neutral point for the spherical axis for the mixed astigmatism refractive error. At this point we would make an estimate from our bony corner of our eye to the phone screen, and when we get two measurements the same, measuring to the nearest 1/32 of an inch, we can write down and record that estimate. Now our goal in terms of measuring our astigmatism axis in degrees, we first have to align the phone along the astigmatism axis, and right now we're aligning the spherical axis for a 2C measurement. This is done by placing a ruler centrally on the phone screen and then rotating the phone until the ruler towards the vertical until the ruler is exactly vertical to us, and that realigns our phone along our astigmatism axis. Now at this point, if we're to move closer to the screen, the astigmatism axis will get a little bit easier to see, but the lines will never become in clear focus, and further from the screen the same thing will happen. That's because we're farsighted along this axis, and there's no real point where we're going to get the lines in perfect focus, but we're exactly aligned along the astigmatism axis. Now to determine our astigmatism axis in degrees, we just need to move down to the astigmatism axis target, widen it to expand the screen, and then by placing a ruler exactly vertical through the center of the astigmatism axis, we can actually measure our astigmatism axis in degrees from the scale where the straight edge of the ruler intersects the scale from above. Since it's a bit out of focus, but that would indicate that we're right around 65 to 64 degrees for our astigmatism axis in degrees. Usually you need the help of some old reading glasses or your old glasses to be able to read that scale if you're farsighted. And this would complete our reading, where we've obtained both an estimate along our spherical axis for a mixed astigmatism as well as determined our astigmatism axis in degrees. after recording both of those in the answer section below the narrative.